All right, what's up, guys? We are back with another podcast episode. This week, I am going solo. Isaac was already down in Texas for a next-gen tournament that he was competing in, and then he's also staying there all the way through UPA Worlds, which I will actually be leaving for in just a few days. So this week's episode is probably going to be shorter than normal. There wasn't too much to cover this week, but there was some thoughts about some paddles and other things that I just kind of wanted to go over and give you guys some thoughts on. But who knows? I always end up saying podcast episodes are going to be short, and then they end up being just as long as every single other podcast. So if I manage to pull that off on my own this week, I'll be really impressed. All right, first thing I want to talk about is at UPA Worlds this week, there's going to be a content creator battle that is streamed on the PPA YouTube channel. This is going to be on Thursday at 6 p.m. Central Time, and it's going to be me and Isaac versus Braden from Pickleball Effect, and then Brian Lim from Building Pickleball. So this is something we've had set up for a couple weeks with the PPA. They heard about us playing Braden and Kyle, and we're like, hey, you guys should just do something like this at the PPA. And we said, sure, why not? So I think it'll be kind of fun. If you're going to be at UPA Worlds, you should come to Grandstand Court and give it a watch. We'll see how it's going to go. I don't think any of us have ever played in front of, I don't want to say that many people because I don't even know who's going to come and watch. But either way, I think the atmosphere will be different or more pressure than probably any of us are used to playing in because of being live streamed and then also whoever's going to come watch in person. So definitely come give it a watch. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. If you haven't seen our banter on Instagram yet, you should go check out Pickleball Effect and then Building Pickleball's Instagram as well as mine. There's been some fun, friendly banter. But I'll end that on a Brian and Braden, I hope you are ready to take the 3-5 torch away from me and carry it. All right, moving on. So I released a new series this week called Chasing 5-0. This was the first episode, and if you guys watched it, I'd love to hear your thoughts, what you think could be done better. Was it entertaining? So on and so forth. One thing that someone mentioned that I definitely want to do more in the future is they suggested adding more commentary in the middle of the video rather than doing it after a game. And I think that's a pretty good idea. Probably something I'm going to experiment with. I should have, if I got to finish all my editing in time, I should have another Chasing 5-0 episode coming out this week. It was from the Open Division tournament that I played. I don't know that I'll get to add commentary to that one before I leave, but either way, a new one should be coming out soon. So anyways, if there's things that you guys think could be improved or you think would make it more entertaining to watch gameplay like that, just let me know. I'm all ears. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I've never really, outside of when I was newer, I haven't gotten to specifically focus on getting better in a long time. And actually, I should rephrase that. It's not that I haven't been able to. I've chosen not to so that I can get more paddle reviews done. So my thought was, okay, well, if I just turn improving into work for the channel, well, now you have to get better for work. So it was kind of a kill two birds with one stone thing. So I think it'll be kind of fun. If you haven't seen yet, the goal is basically going to be get my duper over 5-0. Currently, I sit at a 4.71, and then after that, it's going to be winning 2 APP or 2 PPAs. Doesn't matter which. Could be 1 APP, could be 1 PPA, could be 2 of either. And there has to be more than 10 teams in each of the brackets. Otherwise, less than 10 to me feels too small, and you never know. It just feels like it probably shouldn't count. So that's kind of the goal. We'll see how long it takes to get there. I think as long as I fix some of my really sloppy aspects of my game, I don't think it'll be too bad, but we'll see. Either way, looking forward to it. I think it will be a lot of fun. All right, now on to some paddle thoughts. I want to go over the 007 a little bit. So I put out my first look, and I didn't realize that the 10 millimeter was going to be so delayed for everyone. So I got mine a week and a half, 2 weeks, maybe about 2-ish weeks before the official launch of the paddle. And then it wasn't until the day the video went live that I found out that the 10 millimeter wasn't shipping until much later. In my opinion, the 14 millimeter is pretty underwhelming. I think there are going to be people who probably do like it, but in my opinion, the 10 millimeter is really the show. It's much faster in the hand. It's much poppier. It's very powerful. I think in the right hands, it can be very good. One of my friends here has been using the paddle, and when he's on with it, he's very on. But I do think overall consistency is going to be very difficult because resetting with that ball or just getting a consistent bounce off of the sweet spot is very difficult. So when everyone gets the 10 millimeter, I'm very curious to see what people think. I think, again, it's paddle with an extremely high skill ceiling and a very low floor if you're off. And I think that other power paddles just kind of do it better than the 007. So paddles that come to mind right away would be maybe even the gearbox. Honestly, I feel like I had an easier time dinking and resetting with that than I did the 007. The Ronbus Ripple is for sure an overall more complete package. The paddle techs, even, I would say. So I don't know. If you liked the Power Air and are familiar with that feel, 007 is going to feel like a very logical upgrade. You'll probably get a similar feel, but with amped up power and pop. So that might be nice for you, but I don't know that the 007 is going to be a paddle that fits the masses. And then the other thing, probably the biggest thing that might even make it worth it, we still have to wait and see if the claim is even true, is their whole Infinigrit thing, claiming that it lasts 3 times longer than raw carbon fiber. If that's true, that's awesome. And I can't wait for that to trickle down into all of Selkirk's other paddles. I think that could be huge for the industry if it's true, but we're going to have to wait and see. Oftentimes I find that companies put way too big of claims on their new technologies, and I feel like in my experience in the few years I've been doing this, the vast majority of time, it's not true. Especially, I've seen it so many times with either Kevlar or raw carbon fiber. Everyone's like, oh, we enhanced the texture and now it lasts much longer. And pretty much always, it's about the same longevity as all other raw carbon fiber. So we'll have to wait and see as more people use it and report. I've got someone testing mine to kind of beat down the grit. So we'll see how it goes. Also, one other thing I wanted to add is Lewis from Pickleball Pursuit. His 007 actually ended up being quite a bit lighter than mine. So if you recall from the video, I mentioned that the stock range goes from 7.9 ounces all the way up to 8.4, which is a pretty big range. I mean, that's a reasonably light paddle to almost a heavy static paddle. Not that static weight really means that much. I think these days we know that it's more balance and swing weight related. But anyways, Lewis's was like 117 swing weight, and mine was 122, and John's was 124. So my guess is John got one on the really high end, and Lewis got one on the low end. So just know that you might get one, and it might not be as heavy as mine or John's unit. So keep that in mind when you get it. Might not feel that bad to you. But I thought that was kind of interesting. I feel like Selkirk, generally speaking, has always been pretty consistent with swing weight ranges. I feel like their Power Air was always pretty much spot on for the most part. So I'm kind of surprised with the 007 that there's such a range. I don't know if that has to do with the titanium mesh layer or something else, but just thought that was interesting either way. So I would highly recommend, if you're going to try, if you want to buy a 007, do not buy one until you've had the chance to try one, because at $333, there's a whole lot of other paddles you could consider. So unless you're just a really diehard Selkirk fan and you know you love the Power Air, I would wait till you could hit one, because I think it's going to be pretty polarizing overall. All right, moving on to the next thing. We have the Neonic Flare Prime X. I will have a review up tomorrow if everything all goes according to plan. Still editing the video. The release is tomorrow, and the goal is to have it done by tomorrow. I don't have a lot that I'll share in this other than that it's a good paddle. Let me actually grab it here. So this is the Neonic Flare Prime X. It's a standard shape paddle. It's trying to be a little bit more power focused. When they pitched it as a Paddle Tech competitor. It is definitely not a Paddle Tech 12.7 millimeter competitor, in my opinion. I think Neonic probably never should have said that because I think it's going to give people the wrong impression. If you want my opinion right now, I think it slots somewhere between above a Monarch All Court and then pretty much right identical with the Paddle Tech 14.3 millimeter in terms of pop and power, but you just get a larger sweet spot and a different feel off the face. This is a little bit more dense. It's more stiff than the Paddle Tech, but they're both good. And I mean, I think after code, the Neonic is like $126. So if you're comparing it to the Paddle Tech, it's clear almost $100 cheaper. The value is here, but it's definitely not exactly a Paddle Tech. So if that's what you were hoping for, I would get that out of your mind. I think it competes in terms of pop and power, but feel is very different. So just keep that in mind. Very good, but just not quite exactly a Paddle Tech. But I mean, for $120-something, it's hard to complain. I mean, that paddle's just so cheap at that point. Like anytime you're below like 140, I feel like that is a very competitive price range if you have a good performing paddle. And that's exactly what this is. So there you go. All right. Next up, we have the Vatic Pro Saga, which is right down here. So this is Vatic's newest paddle coming out. This comes out November 15th. I'm very early into hitting this paddle, so I can't give you too many thoughts yet, but it is interesting. So I'm not going to get too much into it right now. We'll talk about this in just a second for the main topic, but something I've noticed about the paddle industry is that new paddles are not necessarily better. And I realize I'm actually just about to go into that topic entirely, so I'll come back to that. Just keep that in mind. This paddle is definitely good. It's at that $140-ish price point, I believe, maybe $150, and then after code, it's a little bit cheaper. I would say this is probably better than their last Orange Pro line. I think the paddle is good, but I don't think that it's going to blow people's minds. At the price range it's at, I think it's very competitive. I think it's good. If you liked Vatic paddles, this is still going to be good. I just don't know that I would expect this to completely shock the paddle market like something like a Ronbus Ripple. I don't think that was necessarily their goal with it. I think this is more of refinements. In some ways, it reminds me of a Vatic Prism that hits a lot harder, but still has kind of that softer feel to it, doesn't feel as jarring. So I think it'll be interesting. I'm curious to hit this more and see what else I think. But yeah, this one is coming up after the Neonic Flare Prime X review. And actually, speaking of the Ronbus Ripple, still unclear what the release date on that thing is. I have now seen more people in my Discord talking about theirs heating up, and it's actually a very similar thing to mine. Once the edge guard comes loose, usually the top portion of the paddle gets squishy and gets a lot hotter. So enough people have reported that now that unless it changes, which I know they're working to make some changes, this is just an issue I expect to see with the paddle, which is unfortunate because I think when that paddle is brand new, it's very good. I love it out of the box. If it could just remain that for pretty much forever, it would be incredible. So hopefully they get that figured out. But yeah, still no release date on that. So we'll see with the Ronbus Ripple. All right, last thing. Actually, I have a couple more things paddle-wise that I forgot I wanted to talk about. Pickleball Apes, the Pulse line. So I've only gotten to hit these a little bit, and I kind of decided to pause working on a video for these until I hear more about this whole break-in thing. It seems like some people experience the break-in, some people don't experience the break-in. Pickleball Apes has said there's not really supposed to be one, and I know they're looking into it and trying to fix it. So once I hear more about that and whether it's solved or that's just going to be a thing that it was designed to do, which is crazy to say, I'm just planning to wait because I want to make sure that you guys get all the proper information that you can. And if you do want it right now, you can obviously watch like John Q's review on it. He did an exceptionally good review on the paddle. But yeah, so far I would say they seem like very promising paddles. It's just anytime you introduce something kind of new technology-wise, there's always a question mark of like, is it going to change? Is it going to stay the same? And I just know that I'm not going to be able to put like a month time on this paddle. And if it is going to heat up and change a lot, I'd like to for you guys to be able to know that. So that is the Pickleball Apes Pulse, but seems very good. I know a lot of people are loving the Pulse V. And then just a few quick updates on these. These don't release until like December, but Chorus is updating their Shapeshifter line. So they have 3 new shapes of the paddle, and it's a standard or wide body. I haven't actually measured this one yet. I think this actually might be a wide body, if I remember correctly. So they have this wide body with a longer handle. Then they have a hybrid without the curved head. And then, or actually, hang on one second. Which one is it? The white one. This one is the hybrid without a curved head. I actually don't know why they did that. I feel like hybrids with the curved head tend to perform well. We haven't seen a lot of flathead hybrids, but anyways, that's this. And then they just have an elongated version. I think it is probably smart of them to make different shapes of the Shapeshifter, and they also made some refinements in terms of like the fiberglass. I don't know if they did a different type of fiberglass or if they rearranged the layer, but these feel just a little bit more poppy than the other one I remember hitting in the past, but I don't have a lot of time on a Shapeshifter. So anyways, these come out in December. I'm very curious to hit these a little bit more. Yeah, I don't know. Don't expect anything too crazy with these, but they could be kind of interesting. And then the last thing I want to talk about really quickly is we have the 11/6/24 sale that's coming up. So this year they had been kind of joking or teasing in my Discord that they probably need to do some big celebration for the date 11/6/24, which is 2 days from now on Wednesday. And they're actually doing a pretty big discount. So if you were planning to pick up anything from the Monarch line, now is going to be your best time to do it because the whole Monarch line will be 35% off. And then it also stacks with the code PB Studio or any code that you want to use. And that means the Jelly Bean should be less than $60, I believe. And then the Monarch All Court should be less than $100 and probably less than $90, if my math is correct. You'll have to check on the actual date. But either way, less than $60 for a Jelly Bean is probably one of the best deals in pickleball right now. Like if you were on the fence at all about picking one up, at $50, you should probably just pick one up. And then less than $90 for a Monarch All Court is absolutely insane as well. So if you were on the fence, that's going to be your best time to do it. So pretty cool sale from them. And yeah, that's all we've got for paddles. All right, now for the main topic. Basically what I wanted to talk about is just that it's an interesting time in the pickleball paddle market for the rest of the year. So there's a number of releases that are coming out. And over my time in pickleball, I've noticed, different leaps in technology. When I started, one of the best paddles was the Franklin Ben John Signature paddle. $100, spray-on grit, fiberglass. And then, we saw things like the Electrum Model E come out with raw carbon fiber, and then various other Gen 1 paddles. The Yolas came out. Those were really awesome. Large sweet spot. And then we saw thermoforming, and there's all these different leaps in technology. And right now, I think we are kind of at a stalemate, partially because of all the new rules and regulations coming. I think people are just pausing until they know exactly what the heck is going on. So maybe things are going to pick back up again. But with all the paddles that are about to come out, I wanted to talk about this because I think it's very easy when seeing all these different reviews online to fall into this trap of this new paddle is the best thing ever. I need that paddle. But I think with a lot of paddles coming out right now, it's not that they're so much better. They're really just filling a small gap in the market, which for some people might be an awesome thing. But for most of you, that means you don't really need to go out and upgrade your paddle. One of the best examples of that, in my opinion, right now is these 3 paddles. So we have the Monarch All Court, the Neonic Flare Prime X, and then the PaddleTech 14.3 millimeter. So the Monarch All Court sits squarely in the All Court category. I think this is a very good all-around paddle. It's very competitively priced. Awesome paddle. Then you take the Neonic Flare Prime X, and it's basically turning the all court up just a few notches. Not a lot, just a couple. So if you had this square in the all court category, the Neonic Flare Prime X probably sits right between all court and the power category. Like it's like right on that line. It could teeter one way or another. And then the PaddleTech 14.3 millimeter is very similar to the Neonic Flare Prime X in overall performance, pop and power, but you're getting a different feel. And then if I was to add one more paddle, which I don't have in my hand here, the PaddleTech 12.7 millimeter, that goes one step further over into the power category. So if you just took the Neonic Flare Prime X out of this, you would see there's a little bit of a gap there, both in price and value and just a little bit in performance, right? Like if you wanted just a little bit more than an all court, but you didn't quite want the power of a PaddleTech 12.7 millimeter, but you wanted a similar thermoform feel, boom, Neonic Flare Prime X. So it has a little bit bigger of a sweet spot than the PaddleTech. Fits a nice small gap. If you have a PaddleTech, or if you had a Monarch all court, I would not say that you need to go out and buy the Neonic Flare Prime X, even though I think it's an awesome paddle. I'm really enjoying playing with it. It's a great value, but it's fitting such a small gap, and it's not so much of an upgrade that it would be like, yeah, go and buy this, right? Maybe if you're coming from something a lot older, it could be that, but if you own one of those, just know that you don't really need to upgrade. So, and I think that's going to be true of a lot of different paddles that are coming out, right? Like I think even something like the new Vatic Saga that's coming out, or even the Pickleball Apes Pulse, like they're not pushing the boundaries of power. They're not pushing the boundaries of spin. They're just adding these nice, subtle upgrades, whether it be in feel, sweet spot, or maybe slightly bumping up the power from their last model. But it isn't like a Ronbus Ripple where it's almost just like redefining like what a paddle can even do. So that's just really what I want you guys to understand is, yeah, just because something's new doesn't always mean it's better. And I think this was perfectly illustrated in my Volair Control versus Mach 2 video. The Mach 2 Forza has been an incredible paddle for the last year. I still think it is an elite control paddle. I could easily recommend that to a lot of different people. And then you come out with the Control 2, which, yeah, maybe it has a little bit more pop. Maybe it has a little bit more power and it's a slightly different feel, but is that worth $20 when you already have a Mach 2 Forza? In my opinion, no, it's not. And then not to mention, consistency with grit issues, whatever. But yeah, that's just a perfect example of newer is not always better, right? And I think you can look at several paddles from the last year that are still good today. The Vatic Prism line. Yes, the 11624 Jelly Bean is out, but they don't have it in a hybrid and they don't have it in elongated right now. So if you want that, the Prism, yeah, it's a year old, but it's still really good, even though the Jelly Bean has a lot of hype. And then the Engage Pursuit Pros from last year, still think those are really good. The Gearbox Pro Power, I mean, do I even need to say more? People are still complaining about that paddle a year later, so clearly it's still good. So all of that to say, new does not always mean better, and I think the era of paddles that we have entered is small refinements that are nice, but definitely not something you have to rush out and buy. I think once the regulations lock down, we'll see people trying to push different boundaries again and probably come back to some bigger innovation. But I also think with some paddles, we've gone up so much since I started that maybe we're just going to start hitting a wall until regulations loosen up or rules change. Who knows? I could be completely wrong there. But obviously, as we get more and more upgrades, there's going to be less and less things companies can do to keep improving these paddles. So just keep that in mind. If you have a paddle that you're pretty happy with, you don't always have to buy into, everyone saying, oh, this paddle's the best thing since sliced bread. In fact, I would say I know for pretty much every single player, as long as you have a paddle that checks about 85 to 90% of the boxes for you, then you should just stick with it and get really good with it, right? There's always going to be a give and take, whether that's swing weight, twist weight, maybe the spin's not as good as you want, the sweet spot's maybe a little smaller, maybe it's not as maneuverable. There's always going to be something in a paddle that's a little off for you, right? But you can always give up that 10 to 15% and enjoy the rest of it, right? I'd say for most people, it's not often you're going to find the perfect paddle, right? There's always something new that looks more enticing and seems like it would improve your game. But if you just pick an overall solid paddle that fits your game and you stick with it and get really good, it'll be far, far, far better for your game than buying a new paddle will. Take it from someone who gets to hit every single pickleball paddle on the market that comes out. I would be a much, much better player if I didn't have to switch paddles all the time. And I'm not complaining about that. I love that I get to hit all these paddles. I love that I get to tell you guys about all these. But if my only goal was to get as good at pickleball as fast as humanly possible, it would be finding a good enough paddle and then sticking with it and not changing, because that would be the best thing for your game. So yeah, there will always be something that gives you just a little bit more, but usually that comes with a trade-off, right? Okay, cool. Ronbus Ripple hits really hard, has incredibly good spin, but that's probably going to come at the expense of touch, which means the kitchen game is harder, resets are harder, drops are harder. Maybe you're not making it to the kitchen as much, but if you are up there, maybe your counters are amazing. And then, yeah, with an all-court paddle, you can't just hit the ball through people, but now maybe your drops, your resets, your dinking's better, your overall consistency has raised. There's always a give and take. So just keep that in mind. It's just something I wanted to go over because there's plenty of paddles coming out, but as I'm looking at a lot of them, minus maybe the Ronbus Ripple and maybe one other paddle, there's not a lot that's like really changing the market right now. I think it's just about companies going, hey, we're going to make this a little bit better of a value than this other paddle that people really like. And maybe we'll make it slightly better performance. You know, I feel like that's kind of what this Flare Prime X was going after was, okay, we're going to be almost $100 cheaper than a Paddle Tech, so value-wise, it's there. Performance is pretty much there, I would say. With the 14.3, I think the Paddle Techs consistently get more spin than the Neonic does, and I'm going to guess that their manufacturing process is a lot more consistent than these Neonic paddles. But, you know, the value is there. But, you know, if you already had a Paddle Tech, do you need to go buy a Neonic Flare Prime X? I would say probably not, unless there's something you're really unhappy with on the Paddle Tech. Like you really, really don't like the smaller sweet spot. Yeah, then maybe you'd want to pick this up. But I don't know. I just wanted to say all that. Again, I'm probably repeating myself here, talking to myself. But yeah, I think it's just not that big of a gap between paddles. Maybe next year, that's when we're going to start seeing it. And I think you'll also see companies frequently kind of undercut each other. So for example, 6-0 Double Black Diamond last year. One of the most popular paddles by far, I would say. The hybrid shape was really popular. The price was just competitive enough that it was cheaper than a lot of the Selkirks, the Yolas, Carbon, those big guys. And it was like, okay, 160 after discount code, good price to beat. Then this year, you had Honolulu, which I think probably made a slightly improved Double Black Diamond. Improved is tricky because, you know, each player wants different things. But you get a little bit more pop. You get a little bit more stability, which is nice, and they lowered the price. So the Double Black Diamond, I think it's still good, but basically it just got beat out in small amounts of performance, and then value got even better with something like that. So sometimes it's not that these older paddles, in my opinion, just fall completely out of relevance. I think a lot of people could still use Double Black Diamond and be totally fine performance-wise, play some great pickleball. But if you were trying to squeeze all the value and maybe a little bit of extra performance with like that sweet spot and extra pop, the J2K would be there. So again, it's not really that the Double Black Diamond has completely lost relevance. It's just that it got undercut in terms of price. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have for today's episode. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I don't think this was too long, but thought I would give you guys all of that warning just with all of the paddles coming out. So unless you are really, if you are really in the market for a new paddle, then yes, some of these upcoming paddles might be something you're interested in. If you already have what I would consider like a top performing paddle, or one that is generally accepted as very good, or you're happy with it, I'd probably hold off for most of the next month or two. So anyways, guys, thanks for listening to the podcast, and we'll catch you next week after Worlds. Hope we see you guys at the content creator battle if you are at UPA Worlds. Anyways, later.